Hello, Axumite Gebre-Egziabhr. You're the Director of the Global Division for the UNHABITAT. Could you tell me why you're here at COP16?
I'm here because UNHABITAT has been working on sustainable urban development and housing. And therefore, we would like to bring the urban issues up front within the climate change agenda. As you know, urban is the future. Already, more than 50% of the population lives in urban areas globally. And out of that, about 1 billion already live in slum areas. We know the projection shows that the urban population will increase, but the significant increase is going to be in the developing countries. But the cities are not prepared for the influx that we project would be living in the cities. As you can see, if we are currently having 1 billion, the cities and the countries need to be prepared for the future urban population in terms of policies, taking into account adaptation mechanisms, mitigation mechanisms, and also transfer of technology and possibility of financing as well. So we would like to show that the future is urban and that policies need to look into that. Whatever is being done at the moment has also to look at the local level situation, i.e. the cities.
So what kind of influx are we talking about if we take a major city in a developing country?
We are talking about huge influx because conceptually, economic development means transformation. Transformation is urbanization. So if we take Latin America and the Caribbean, already more than 75% of the people are living in urban areas. Even Africa, which is considered to be the rural continent, has the highest urbanization rate. So if I take, for example, Nairobi, we're looking at more than 60% of the population of Nairobi living in the slums, where there are no basic infrastructure and services and proper structure in terms of housing, and with lack of access to water and sanitation and other services. So this is because the city was not prepared for such influx. It is coming in a short period of time, and we're looking at between around 3 to 4% increase, and that is a lot.
So a lot of action needs to happen in the short term then, doesn't it?
Yes, if you compare with the cities that have been with the cities that are already big enough. For example, you look at London, it was urban, it reached there in more than a century period of time, 100 years. But this is, for example, if you take the developing countries, cities like Bangkok, this is happening only in 45 years. So because of the development that we see, because of the transformation we see, the cities are growing in a much faster rate than what came to be cities in other developed countries. So the local authorities need to plan their cities to be prepared for the future, because it is, it's not, there is nothing that stops it, because people move for a better life. There is already a natural increase, but also they are pushed by the rural development. When the rural development takes place, people are going out of that occupation, so they are moving. And therefore, if we don't take cautious action now and have preventive mechanisms in terms of policies, not to create another slum areas, then we would end up talking about if the project, as we see the projections, and if business as usual goes on, what we think is we are going to have another crisis. Now we are talking about economic crisis, food crisis. If business as usual continues, the increase in the cities will move on. It's going to be mainly in the developing countries' cities, and therefore, if we don't take preventive mechanisms in terms of policy, but also immediate action in terms of upgrading the slums and provision of basic services and infrastructure, we would talk about urban crisis. So what we are trying...
What crisis?
Urban crisis. Now we talk of economic crisis, very soon we'll have the other crisis. It is important that we look into what is happening to the future projection of cities, the demographic shift that we see, and be prepared so that we don't create new slums, rather we move to better planned cities with the necessary basic infrastructure and services, but also improving the governance of the cities, because it is not only the planning, it has to go with the planned but well-managed sustainable cities. And we also look at, if you look at the city, coastal cities, we need to prepare in terms of planning for them. Even if need be, at times where there is a need to have a relocation, we have to be able to plan and be prepared to relocate people, but with consultation, with due consultation with the people, in order to avoid the things that we see now because of the sea level rise. So what we are trying to show here is that it is important to consider the situation of the cities, strengthen the local authorities to adapt to the unavoidable changes that are caused by climate change. Rather, we need to build the capacity of the local authorities for them to adapt in terms of the provision of the infrastructure that is required, but also improved governance, but also participation of the communities, and so that they are able to develop city planning, strategic planning of the cities together with the communities, and at the same time develop tools, innovative interventions immediately, but also improve and mainstream those initiatives into their policies for the future, so that climate change mechanisms are not an add-on, but rather they become the way of life and doing things.
But the UNHABITAT is quite a small organisation compared to the other secretariats. How are you going to possibly gather the resources to kind of drive forward this kind of change?
Yes, relatively compared to other agencies, it's a small agency, but it is an effective agency because we are focused, we have specific expertise, and we have been working in terms of developing the capacity of the local authorities. One, we use normative policy. We support member states in developing their normative policies. With that, for those who have the financial and human resources, we have flagship reports where we indicate what sort of policies they need to adopt within their context, of course. But at the same time, when and if requested, we go for hands-on activities and support. So our approach is building capacity. So in places where we feel that there is a capacity, then we have to move on to another one. But also we have to bear in mind that not all the cities are going to adapt the same. No, far from it. They have all these mechanisms that we are proposing have to be looked at within the context of the cities. So you don't need to be big in order to be effective. And so far we have been doing them, and if need be, there is depending on the need, we have grown so far, because it was a very small agency. Over the years we have grown, and there is a possibility to grow. But you don't have to be big to be effective.
That's true. Thank you. And can we finish on a success story? Is there a particular success story of a city adapting to climate change that you could hold up?
Yes, we have been working on sustainability, on sustainable cities for a long time. But climate change is new, as we have done. Since then, we have been supporting different cities. For example, in the Philippines, we have managed to support cities, and what we have done is the first one in terms of adaptation. For example, we have gone first to support the city in terms of developing their vulnerability assessment, because it is important to have the risk assessment. Where is it so that they are able to prioritize based on their resources. So we did that. We also helped them, supported them in developing tools, and also what to do with the policies in terms of improving their policies. They have adopted, they have already enacted it, and then now they have mainstreamed it to their national policies, and we are trying to have it as a showcase to the neighboring countries so that they are able to transfer this adaptation mechanisms to others. But of course, here we have to bear in mind every solution is not imported. It has to be taken in the city's context, in the country's context. So we have to look at it in terms of diversity. Whatever you find in one city might be the situation might be different, but we have seen it being mainstream to the policy, and that is the most important. Whether we are there or not, it has become part of the policy, national policy. So from local practical work, they have moved to mainstream it to their national policies, and that's what we would like to see in every city with this sort of example. But we have started and in different cities, and we are documenting Of course, this has to be also in terms of climate change. The cities are not waiting for us or for any other decision. They are acting in their own way. But what we are trying to do is we are taking some, and especially in supporting them to do their risk assessment, to look at their, the vulnerability so that they prioritize. We support them in developing their policies and also develop tools that they can use on their own. And then the most important that we are insisting is, looking into this climate change mechanisms, whether it's adaptation or mitigation. It is important that they develop their own network, because it is all about learning and sharing, but also partnering and action on the ground. If they are able to do within the city, at the national level and at the global level, there is always solution that we all can learn from each other.
Axumite, thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you very much.